Yo, welcome back to Controller Culture, where we break down the games that shape the way we play. Today we're diving into the world of Hollow Knight Silksong as we continue our journey through the lore of every character. Today, it's Chakra. In Hollow Knight Silksong, nearly every character Hornet meets carries a story, some tragic, some mysterious, some humorous. But out of all the wanderers scattered around the continent of Pharloom, few undergo a transformation as profound, as human, and as thematically rich as Chakra. You may know her as the cartographer of Silksong. You may know her as the warrior who roams Pharloom searching for a lost mentor. But what many players don't realize is that Chakra's journey quietly forms one of the most compelling arcs in the entire game. Today we're diving deep, all the way into the culture that shaped her, the meaning behind the tribe's rituals, how her worldview is shattered, rebuilt, and expanded, and how this humble cartographer becomes something far greater than what her tribe ever expected of her. This is the full lore dive into Chakra wielding rings, warrior, cartographer, and one of Silksong's most quietly powerful characters. To understand Chakra, we first need to understand where she came from. Her tribe sits on the outskirts of Pharloom, perched on its very edge, both geographically and culturally. This is a clan where combat isn't just skill, it's a belief system, a culture, a measurement of worth, and ultimately a way of life. Their worldview is brutally simple. Strength is truth, skill is honor, death in battle is glory, and living long enough to die of age and shameful failure. To an outsider, this may seem extreme, even barbaric, but to the tribe, it's the only logic they've ever known. Each warrior is defined by their weapon of mastery. Not their name, not their bloodline, not their role in society, their weapon. That's why Chakra introduces herself as Chakra wielding rings. Her weapon is her identity. And when she meets Hornet, she immediately labels her as child wielding needle. To Chakra's tribe, this isn't the rude, this is the truest and most respectful way you can acknowledge someone. It also highlights something important. This tribe doesn't see individuals as complex beings. They see them as expressions of force, combat units defined by their lethality. Even the philosophy of death reveals their worldview. To die peacefully is to surrender all meaning. To die in combat is to ascend with honor. Imagine growing up in a world where you're only as valuable as you are deadly. Your worthiness ends the moment your strength does, and your tribe judges the elderly not for surviving, but for failing to fall in battle. This is the mindset Chakra is raised in. This is the lens through which she first views the world, and this is the foundation from which her transformation becomes so striking. But if this tribe is so rigid, so insistent, so fiercely loyal to its worldview, what made Chakra leave? Her answer? Her mentor. A master warrior whom she respected more than any other, a figure of wisdom, resilience, and unwavering discipline. And when this mentor vanished into Pharloom on a mysterious pilgrimage, Chakra's life changed forever. She wasn't just searching for a missing elder, she was searching for meaning, for understanding, for proof that her tribe's beliefs were the right ones. Her quest isn't simply out of devotion, it's also a test of her tribe's ideals, a test of her mentor's teachings, a test of herself. And that brings us to her arrival in Pharloom. When Chakra first enters the land of Pharloom, she carries more than her rings. She carries the weight of an entire culture on her back, and she doesn't realize it. To her, the world is divided into the strong and the weak, and she assumes she already knows which one the pilgrims of Pharloom are. We see this immediately in Bone Bottom, where she says with utmost comic frustration, "Where are the armaments? These watch poles? Never have I seen such poorly defended encampment." She is genuinely shocked by how vulnerable these bugs seem. To her tribe, being undefended means being unworthy of survival. So standing in a settlement where no one brandishes a weapon, where bugs express fear, faith, and hope rather than aggression, the community exists without constant threat. To her, it felt like madness. And yet Chakra stays. She walks amongst the pilgrims, She talks with them, she listens, she watches how they rely on one another, not through force, but through endurance. Every conversation chips away at the rigid armor of her upbringing. This is where Chakra becomes one of the most brilliantly subtle characters in Silksong. Because while Hornet is on a journey of survival, Chakra is on a journey of understanding. As she explores Pharloom, from shrines to caverns, from villages to ruins, she begins to witness what her tribe never taught her. Strength comes in many forms. Not in rings, needles, blades, or force, not in dominance, not in glory, but in perseverance, community, faith, and hope. The slow shift prepares her for what she's ultimately seeking, the truth about her master. Chakra's quest threads through the entire game. Whenever Hornet encounters her, she has charted new lands, uncovered new clues, and grown just a little bit more philosophical. But beneath her discipline and resolve, she is driven by deep emotion, a devotion to her mentor that defines her purpose. This mentor wasn't just a teacher, they were a guide, a parental figure, a symbol of all the tribe's ideals, which raises a troubling question. If they embodied everything the tribe stood for, why did they leave? Why abandon their home? Why cross Pharloom? Why die alone? These questions simmer beneath every step of Chakra's journey. As she continues exploring, she starts to reflect on the pilgrims she has met. And during one of these later encounters, she says something that shows just how far she has come. Sometimes we judge too quickly. There is a subtle strength to them. This is not the same warrior who mocked Bonebottom's watchpoles. This is someone discovering a new way of seeing. And then she finds what she's been searching for. She finds her master, not alive, not victorious, not in battle, but lying still, peaceful, and gone. Her master died far from the tribe, without a weapon in their grasp, without a tribe witnessing their passing. To her people, this would be the ultimate disgrace. But Chakra does not see disgrace. For the first time in her life, she sees the truth. Her mentor's journey across Pharloom was not a retreat. It was not an abandonment. It was a pilgrimage of understanding. Their final lesson was not in technique, but in perspective. Chakra says, "Share witness to its dignity." This is what her mentor wanted her to see. This is what the tribe could never teach her, and this is the wisdom that completes her transformation. Returning home was not always an option. She could have followed tradition, reported her master's death, reclaimed her status, resumed the tribe's teachings. But now that she's seen Pharloom, she no longer sees home the same way. She says, "My old home, once grand, has now become small, a place for birth and growing, but too narrow to live a bug's full life." This is the moment she outgrows the tribe's worldview. She understands that their ways have value, discipline, clarity, and strength, but they are incomplete, limited, and blind to the wider world. Pharloom opened her eyes to communities not built on dominance, but cooperation. To people who survive not through battle, but through unity. To pilgrims whose strength is silent, devotional, and resilient. And so Chakra makes her choice. She stays in Pharloom, not as a wandering warrior and not as a lost disciple, but as a defender. She settles in Belheart, a community constantly in need of protection, and dedicates herself to guarding the weak and the vulnerable. Her identity shifts, her purpose transforms, her understanding of strength evolves. And we see this most clearly in her music. Early in the game, when Hornet plays a needle lute, Chakra sings songs of the tribe, hymns of discipline, skill, and force. But after her journey is complete, her songs change. She no longer sings of battle or death. She no longer praises discipline or dominance. Instead, she sings of standing strong for those too weak. Her worldview has undergone a total metamorphosis. Her strength is no longer a weapon, it's a shield. That is Chakra's evolution, not the abandonment of her past, but the rebirth of her identity. Now that we've walked through her story, let's break down the deeper meanings and symbols of Chakra's arc. The weapon as identity. Chakra begins as a pure product of her culture, a warrior whose weapon defines her entire identity, but her journey dismantles that identity entirely. In Silksong, many characters are tied to their tools, Hornet, Lace, the Weavers, but Chakra is one of the few who transcends her weapon. Her arc asks, are you your weapon, or are you something more? By the end, Chakra proves the answer. B. Seeing strength in the small. Her tribe respects only brute, visible strength, but Pharloom teaches her that real strength often goes unnoticed. The pilgrims who endure hardship without weapons, the communities that survive through unity, the fragile bugs who keep moving despite fear, these reshape her understanding. She evolves from a warrior of dominance into a warrior of compassion. C. The mentor's final lesson. Her mentor's pilgrimage is symbolic, a rejection of the tribe's new narrow ideology. Their peaceful death is not a failure, but a teaching. By following their path, Chakra unlocks the wisdom they discovered, that life is broader than the tribe's narrow vision. Their final lesson was not how to fight, but how to see. D. Choosing purpose. Chakra's ultimate transformation is not forced upon her. She chooses it. She chooses Pharloom. She chooses to protect. She chooses to define her own meaning. Strength is no longer about killing. It's about shielding, supporting, and enduring. This is what makes her arc so powerful. Chakra's journey may be quieter than the epic battles and divine struggles that shape Silksong's world, but few characters grow as organically or meaningfully as she does. She begins as a rigid warrior defined by tradition and ends as a guardian defined by compassion. She learns that strength is not fixed, not defined by weapons or upbringing, and not bound to the tribe's narrow worldview. Strength is a choice. She learns that life is larger than glory and death, that purpose is broader than combat, that dignity exists in the smallest, weakest, most fragile creatures, and ultimately she learns that her mentor's greatest lesson was not combat technique, but perspective. A warrior who becomes a protector, a cartographer who becomes a witness, a student who becomes a guardian. This is the legacy of Chakra-wielding rings. And in a world full of impossible beings, gods, ghosts, queens, and titans, it is often the grounded characters like Chakra whose journeys strike the deepest chord. Her final message echoes that truth. Stand strong for those too weak. A simple line, a powerful transformation, a beautiful arc. Thank you for joining this lore dive. If you want more Silksong breakdowns, characters, kingdoms, mysteries, don't forget to subscribe for more controller culture lore. Until next time, travel well, warrior.